Hello and welcome. Just before we get started, I would like to tell you a little bit about me. This is a picture of me and my brother from when I was about 5 years old in the 1980s. And when I reflect upon my own experience, I realize that from a very young age, I internalized that I wasn't normal, which was bad, that my needs were unreasonable, that I was unlikable, and that I had to change. And these beliefs, coupled with environmental stressors, led to anxiety, panic attacks, shame, stress, meltdowns, depression, and further trauma. I believe that the problem is that people with autism are being taught that who we are naturally is not okay. And this is an absolutely devastating message to internalize. But there is a brilliant end to my story. I survived the 80s, the 90s, and the turn of the millennium. It was hard, and to be honest, there were a lot of dark days. But now I'm a professor at the University of Alberta. More importantly, I am an autistic professional who studies autism. And this slide highlights some of my many awards and achievements because I want to offer you hope that no matter how hard it is right now for the people with autism whom you support, it can get better. One of the goals of the ON group was to conduct research to better understand how women and non-binary individuals feel about their work experiences. However, while we did this, we also explored what does it mean to thrive, or in other words, what does it mean to experience a high quality of life if you are a female or non-binary individual on the spectrum. And it is these findings that I hope to share with you today. First, we need to define what does it mean to thrive. Benson and Scales developed one model of thriving, and they suggest that thriving involves sparks, opportunities, and voice. But what exactly do they mean by that? According to their model, people who thrive tend to have a spark, or maybe several sparks. A spark is a passion for a self-identified interest, skill, or capacity that metaphorically lights a fire in a person's life and provides energy, joy, purpose, and direction. Secondly, to support a child so that they grow up to be an adult who thrives, they must be given opportunities to identify and develop their sparks, talents, and interests. And these opportunities are often realized through the significant relationships in the child's life. And finally, in order to thrive, you must feel that you have a voice. In other words, you must perceive yourself to be empowered. To truly know a person with autism, you must know our special interest areas. It's not enough to just acknowledge that special interests are important to us. We define ourselves by our special interests, and often after our family, they are the most important thing to us. It's also really important to point out that society loves to pathologize our special interests. Because seriously, if my special interest was the Edmonton Oilers, no one would bat a single eye. When I was in high school and undergrad, one of my intense special interests was General Hospital. I would use a VCR to record General Hospital every day when I was at school, and then I would watch it as soon as I got home. I collected many pictures of my favorite characters, like Brenda and Sunny shown here, and I would paste these pictures into many scrapbooks. When Brenda wore an outfit that I particularly admired, I would ask my mother-in-law, who was a seamstress, to recreate the outfit for me. I even traveled to Walt Disney World in Florida one summer in order to attend the ABC Super Soap Weekend. And I waited in line for hours to get Brenda's autograph. But as you might expect, my mother hated my obsession with General Hospital. We had endless fights about it, often because I refused to ever miss even a single episode. But nothing my mother ever said or did ever impacted the intensity of my obsession. However, eventually, my interest in General Hospital did wane, although it probably held me in its grip for almost a decade. But it did fade naturally, all on its own. Years later, a psychologist explained to me that I was using General Hospital to learn how non-autistics understand and interpret the world. In a soap opera, the plots move very slowly and all of the emotions are exaggerated. So General Hospital became the perfect training ground for me to learn to understand how non-autistic people perceive, understand, and interpret the world. The key point is that while my mother couldn't see any value in my obsession with General Hospital, one of the reasons that my interest was so intense was because I was learning, and it was really important to me. Given the importance of sparks in the Benson's and Scales model of thriving, this intense special interest of people with autism should theoretically hold great promise in fostering our ability to thrive. This is because as many as 95% of people with autism have intense special interests, and our time spent pursuing our special interests can amount to that of a part-time job. This slide shows some basic demographics of the members of our ON group. We had 6 autistics in the group, and one of those was me. We were all Caucasian, 5 of us were female, and there was 1 gender non-binary. Furthermore, 2 of us were employed full-time, 3 of us were employed part-time, and 1 of us was not employed because they were a student. During one of our sessions, we created a graffiti wall by asking the ON members to respond to these spark questions. What is your spark? Where, when, and with whom do you express your spark? How do you engage in your spark? Who knows about your spark? Who nourishes your spark? And what gets in the way of your spark? This is a picture of what the graffiti wall looked like when we had finished the activity. To organize the responses, we used the SPARK classification scheme that was developed by Benson et al. In 2009 to develop categories. And then we coded the number of responses that fell into each category. As well, the symbol N stands for number of responses. So what exactly did we learn? Overall, we found that the ON participants reported a large number of sparks, 28 in total, and all of us reported having more than 1 spark. The most popular category included participating in or leading creative activities like art, dance, or music. A second popular category of sparks was being in nature, caring for animals, and participating in outdoor recreation. Third, many of the ON participants seemed to highly value learning. And it was also interesting that many of their special interests had to do with understanding people with and without autism. And last but not least, many of the participants in the group were quite socially motivated, especially in terms of advocacy. We also asked the group, what gets in the way of your spark? Their responses included the following: ableism, neurotypical expectations, and societal norms, anxiety and stress, illness, other people, and boring responsibilities. This slide shows the comments made by the ON participants with regards to how ableism, neurotypical expectations, and societal norms interfere with our special interests. The participants of the group also created all of the pictures shown on this slide. So one participant said, I made the giant societal norms sign because that always is a constant thought in the back of my head about how arbitrary life is and how difficult it is for us sometimes. A second participant spoke of worrying about how neurotypicals perceive me and trying to blend in and mask for them. We also asked participants, who nourishes your spark? They responded, coworkers, animals and nature, friends, family, and themselves. The findings of this small exploratory study suggest that the sparks and special interests of these autistics were one and the same. And as predicted by theoretical models, the participants' overall well-being seems to be enhanced by engaging in their sparks and special interests. Given that young people with sparks appear to have richer, more meaning-filled lives, the autistic tendency to develop intense special interests should be nurtured as the strengths that they are, rather than suppressed as symptoms of clinical impairment. Intense special interests serve as our way to make sense of the world. Winter Messiers in 2007 wrote that intense special interests give us a clear focus, a way to organize the world, and a way to interpret life. To punish someone by removing our special interest is, in essence, to strip us of a large source of comfort, soothing, and strength. A best practice is to merge our special interest areas with what we are learning at school. In fact, doing so may be one of the only ways for us to demonstrate our true levels of ability in academic assignments. When we consider how to best support people with autism, we need to refocus our interventions on supporting, developing, and celebrating the person's strengths, instead of focusing on teaching us to act like everybody else. Our brains function differently. So if successful treatment means that we will think and behave exactly like everyone else, that treatment will always fail. Because so many of us have internalized that we are broken, it is our job to increase autistics' confidence in themselves. We need you to convey to us that we are good enough as we are right now, not as we might someday be in the future. And a good way to increase a young person's self-worth is by appreciating their efforts and valuing their opinions. The more that you can believe in our strengths, the more that you can see the good in us as we are, the more likely we will internalize that we have value and worth. People with autism have a large number of strengths gifted to them by their neurology. But society needs to do a better job of recognizing that these strengths represent legitimate ways of being in the world. Compared to the 1980s, today most people know that autism exists. But we need much more than autism awareness. Society must ensure that people with autism and other neurominorities are recognized and respected for their strengths and their talents. Thank you.